Hello, I'm Paul Guerin, and I'm reading from episode 13, Nausicaa. Sissy came up along the strand with the two twins and their ball, with her hat anyhow on her to one side after her run, and she did look a streel, tugging the two kids along with the flimsy blouse she bought only a fortnight before like a rag on her back, and a bit of her petticoat hanging like a caricature. Gertie just took off her hat for a moment to settle her hair, and a daintier head of nut-brown tresses was never seen on a girl's shoulders. A radiant little vision, in sooth, almost maddening in its sweetness. You would have to travel many a long mile before you found a head of hair the like of that. She could almost see the swift answering flash of admiration in his eyes that set her tingling in every nerve. She put on her hat so that she could see from underneath the brim, and swung her buckled shoe faster, for her breath caught as she caught the expression in his eyes. He was eyeing her as a snake eyes its prey. Her woman's instinct told her that she had raised the devil in him, and at the thought a burning scarlet swept from throat to brow till the lovely color of her face became a glorious rose. Edie Boardman was noticing it too, because she was squinting at Gertie, half smiling with her specs like an old maid pretending to nurse the baby. Irritable little gnat she was, and always would be, and that was why no one could get on with her, poking her nose into what was no concern of hers. And she said to Gertie, "A penny for your thoughts." "What?" replied Gertie, with a smile reinforced by the whitest of teeth. "I was only wondering, was it late?" Because she wished to goodness they'd take the snotty-nosed twins and their babby home to the mischief out of that. So that was why she just gave a gentle hint about its being late. And when Sissy came up, Edie asked her the time, and Miss Sissy, as glib as you like, said it was 1/2 past kissing time. Time to kiss again. But Edie wanted to know because they were told to be in early. "Wait," said Sissy. "I'll run ask my Uncle Peter over there what's the time by his conundrum." So over she went. And when he saw her coming, she could see him take his hand out of his pocket, getting nervous and beginning to play with his watch chain, looking up at the church. Passionate nature though he was, Gertie could see that he had enormous control over himself. One moment he had been there, fascinated by a loveliness that made him gaze, and the next moment it was the quiet, grave-faced gentleman, self-control expressed in every line of his distinguished-looking figure. Sissy said to excuse her, would he mind please telling her what was the right time? And Gertie could see him taking out his watch, listening to it, and looking up and clearing his throat, and he said he was very sorry. His watch was stopped, but he thought it must be after 8 because the sun was set. His voice had a cultured ring in it, and though he spoke in measured accents, there was a suspicion of a quiver in the mellow tones. Sissy said thanks, and came back with her tongue out, and said Uncle said his waterworks were out of order. Then they sang the second verse of the Tantum Ergo, and Canon O'Hanlon got up again, and sensed the Blessed Sacrament, and knelt down, and he told Father Conroy that one of the candles was just going to set fire to the flowers, and Father Conroy got up and settled it all right. And she could see the gentleman winding his watch and listening to the works, and she swung her leg more in and out in time. It was getting darker, but he could see, and he was looking all the time that he was winding the watch, or whatever he was doing to it, and then he put it back, and put his hands back into his pockets. She felt a kind of sensation rushing all over her, and she knew by the feel of her scalp, and that irritation against her stays, that that thing must be coming on, because the last time, too, was when she clipped her hair on account of the moon. His dark eyes fixed themselves on her again, drinking in her every contour, literally worshipping at her shrine. If ever there was undisguised admiration in a man's passionate gaze, it was there, plain to be seen on that man's face. "It is for you, Gertrude MacDowell, and you know it." Edie began to get ready to go, and it was high time for her. And Gertie noticed that that little hint she gave had had the desired effect, because it was a long way along the Strand to where there was the place to push up the push car, and Sissy took off the twins' caps and tidied their hair to make herself attractive, of course, and Canon O'Hanlon stood up with his coat poking up at his neck, and Father Conroy handed him the card to read off, and he read out "Panem de cielo prestitis dies." And Edie and Sissy were talking about the time all the time, and asking her, but Gertie could pay them back in their own coin, and she just answered with scathing politeness when Edie asked her, was she heartbroken about her best boy throwing her over? Gertie winced sharply. A brief, cold blaze shone from her eyes that spoke volumes of scorn immeasurable. It hurt. Oh, yes. It cut deep, because Edie had her own quiet way of saying things like that she knew would wound like the confounded little cat she was. Gertie's lips parted swiftly to frame the word, but she fought back the sob that rose to her throat. So slim, so flawless, so beautifully molded, it seemed one an artist might have dreamed of. She had loved him better than he knew. Light-hearted deceiver and fickle, like all his sex, he would never understand what he had meant to her. And for an instant there was in the blue eyes a quick stinging of tears. Their eyes were probing her mercilessly, but with a brave effort, she sparkled back in sympathy as she glanced at her new conquest for them to see. "Oh," responded Gertie, quick as lightning, laughing, and the proud head flashed up. "I can throw my cap at who I like, because it's leap year." Her words rang out crystal clear, more musical than the cooing of the ring-dove, but they cut the silence icily. There was that in her young voice that told that she was not a one to be lightly trifled with. As for Mr. Reggie, with his swank and his bit of money, she could just chuck him aside as if he was so much filth, and never again would she cast as much as a second thought on him, and tear his silly postcard into a dozen pieces, and if ever he dared to presume, she could give him one look of measured scorn that would make him shrivel up on the spot. Miss puny little Edie's countenance fell to no slight extent, and Gertie could see by her looking as black as thunder that she was simply in a towering rage, though she hid it, the little canat, because that shaft had struck home for her petty jealousy, and they both knew that she was something aloof, apart, in another sphere, that she was not of them, and never would be, and there was somebody else, too, that knew it and saw it, so they could put that in their pipe and smoke it. Edie straightened up baby Boardman to get ready to go, and Sissy tucked in the ball and the spades and buckets, and it was high time, too, because the Sandman was on his way for Master Boardman, Jr., and Sissy told him, too, that Billy Winks was coming, and that baby was to go dee-daw, and baby looked just too ducky, laughing up out of his gleeful eyes, and Sissy poked him like that out of fun in his wee fat tummy, and baby, without as much as by your leave, sent up his compliments to all and sundry onto his brand-new dribbling bib. "Oh, my puddeny pie!" protested Cis. "He has his bib destroyed." The slight contretemps claimed her attention, but in two twos she set that little matter to rights. Gertie stifled a smothered exclamation and gave a nervous cough, and Edie asked what, and she was just going to tell her to catch it while it was flying, but she was ever ladylike in her deportment, so she simply passed it off with consummate tact by saying that was the benediction, because just then the bell rang out from the steeple over the quiet seashore, because Canon O'Hanlon was up on the altar, with the veil that Father Conroy put round his shoulders, giving the benediction with the blessed sacrament in his hands. Happy Bloomsday from the Rosenbach.